I never thought closing blinds could feel like stepping into another world. But when she said it, her voice low, just above a whisper, and tinged with that casual authority I could never ignore, I froze for a second I didn't know I had. Close the blinds before someone sees. She was standing there, mid-40s, the kind of woman who moved through the office like she owned the air itself, but never arrogantly. I felt my fingers hover over the window latch, fumbling, even though I'd done this 100 times. "Then we're safe now," I said, too quickly, my voice cracking somewhere between bravado and genuine excitement. Her lips twitched, half smile, half question, and I realized she wasn't just looking at me. She was looking through me. For a heartbeat, the fluorescent hum of the repair shop faded, leaving just us, and a weird kind of warmth that had nothing to do with the summer sun pouring through the glass. "I've worked here for months, fixing machines, sorting inventory, cleaning up after the chaos of customers who never quite cared about the people behind the counters." And then there was her, Marissa, mid-40s, sharp eyes, and hands that didn't hesitate when they needed to move, but somehow also carried this softness I couldn't place. She had this habit of showing up at the right moment, leaning against the counter with a coffee cup in hand, tapping her pen on a clipboard, scanning the room like she knew every story before it happened. Today, though, she was leaning slightly closer than usual, the blinds half closed, shadowed light painting stripes across her face. There was a tension there, small and almost polite, like we were both trying not to cross some invisible line, but failing anyway. I watched her fingers brush over a stack of receipts, and the way she sighed quietly, just enough for me to hear, made my chest tighten. I wanted to say something clever, something that would make her laugh, but my mouth had other plans. Silence stretched between us. The ticking clock on the wall seemed deafening, yet somehow perfect. She glanced up at me, those steady eyes catching the last shimmer of sunlight. I swore for a second I could read her thoughts. Amusement, curiosity, maybe a little frustration that I'd just made her office feel 10 degrees smaller. And then she smirked. Tiny, almost invisible, but enough to make me rewind every detail of her posture, her expression, her voice in my mind, over and over. She handed me a screwdriver. "Don't scratch it," she said, but the look in her eyes lingered on me longer than necessary, like a bookmark placed in a novel she wasn't done reading. I nodded, fumbling the tool in my hand, trying to appear casual. I knew I'd failed. She laughed quietly, turning away, and I felt a strange pulse of something I didn't have words for. And then it was gone, just like that. The moment passed, leaving me staring at the half-closed blinds, my heart racing. I shouldn't have cared. I shouldn't have noticed. But I did. Every tiny movement she made felt amplified, and the way the shadow fell across her cheek haunted me longer than I'd admit to anyone. I left the blinds slightly crooked when I walked out. Not because I forgot, but because I wanted the memory of the light on her face to linger. I couldn't stop thinking about the smirk she didn't fully erase from her lips, the unspoken promise in her eyes. Even now, hours later, it's all I can see. The soft curve of her smile, the quiet electricity in a room made for mundane repairs, and that impossible, thrilling question I keep asking myself. What if this, whatever this is, doesn't end with just blinds and shadows? The repair shop smelled like motor oil and old coffee, the kind of scent that clung to your clothes no matter how many times you washed them. I was stacking spare parts when she appeared at the counter, arms crossed, brow slightly furrowed. Marissa always carried this air of control, like she could tame chaos with a single glance. But today, there was a flicker of hesitation in her posture, subtle enough that I almost missed it. "I could use a hand with the new inventory," she said, voice steady but softer than usual. The words felt deliberate, like she was testing me, seeing if I noticed more than the task at hand. I nodded, trying to appear casual, though my heart was already pacing. As we worked side by side, I found myself watching her without meaning to. Her hands moved precisely, almost carefully, brushing past boxes and screws with a delicate attention that didn't fit the grid of the place. When she laughed at some minor mistake I made, an almost embarrassed, half snort, I noticed the faint crinkle at the corner of her eyes. It was brief, fleeting, but it made the air between us lighter, almost dangerously intimate. She paused to straighten a leaning shelf, shoulders tensing, and I realized she hadn't taken a break all morning. Her hair, usually pulled back tight, had strands falling loosely, catching in the sunlight. I wanted to brush them away, but the thought stopped me. She didn't need a gesture from me. She didn't ask for one. And yet, I felt the pull anyway. "Are you sure it's aligned?" I asked, voice quieter than intended. She turned, and for a moment her eyes softened, tired but attentive. "I'll manage," she said, but there was a crack in the armor. Tiny, almost invisible. Her fingers lingered over the edge of the shelf, and I noticed the faint tremor in them. Something unspoken hovered in the space between us. Exhaustion, perhaps, but something more, something she wouldn't say aloud. I caught myself leaning closer than necessary, drawn to the small details she left exposed. The way her lips parted slightly when she concentrated, the faint tension in her jaw, the subtle shift of her weight, as if she were grounding herself. She was so composed, yet so human, and every tiny imperfection felt like an invitation I wasn't supposed to accept. The air between us thickened with an energy I couldn't name. I handed her a wrench without thinking, our fingers brushing. She froze for a heartbeat, and I felt it. The slight intake of her breath, the pause that lingered just a fraction too long. "Thanks," she murmured, not meeting my eyes, but there was weight in her tone. A recognition of something unspoken. I stepped back, suddenly aware of how close we were, and how aware I had become of everything about her. The dim light fell across her features in stripes from the blinds, and for a moment the repair shop faded. All I could see was her. The subtle exhale, the quiet vulnerability she tried to hide, the careful way she carried herself like she had secrets no one was meant to touch. And then she looked up at me, just once, eyes flicking over mine, a glance heavy with unspoken thought. I swallowed, heart thudding, and felt the brush of something forbidden but undeniable. That single, fleeting look clung to me long after she returned to the shelves, and I couldn't shake the sensation that neither of us would forget it anytime soon. The rain had started softly, then picked up, drumming against the windows of the repair shop with a persistent insistence. We were the last two left, stacking parts that no one else had touched all day. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the room, but somehow, in the quiet hum of machines and rain, it felt like we were alone in a different world. She handed me a small box of screws, and our fingers brushed, again, but this time longer. My chest tightened, and I had to look away, pretending to focus on the task. She didn't say anything, just moved closer to the workbench, shoulders nearly touching mine. There was a subtle electricity in that proximity, the kind you can't name but feel with every pulse. "Did you hear from anyone today?" I asked, hesitating. Too casual, too deliberate. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and I caught the flicker of something behind her eyes. Hesitation, a hint of shame maybe, or worry. "No," she said finally, voice low. Then her phone buzzed, breaking the tension. She glanced at it, frowned, and tucked it back into her pocket without answering. Whoever it was nothing she wanted me to see. The storm outside made the workshop feel smaller, cozier, yet somehow more suffocating. I noticed the way she leaned against the counter just a fraction too long when she thought I wasn't looking, how her hand lingered on the edge of the table as if grounding herself. My mind replayed the brush of her fingers on mine, the quiet way she laughed at something I muttered under my breath, and I realized I wanted to say something I couldn't, something that would cross a line. We bent over the same shelf at the same time, our heads nearly touching. I felt the warmth of her hair against my arm, and had to step back before I said anything stupid, before I admitted the truth simmering beneath the surface. She looked up, caught my gaze, and I thought I saw recognition, like she felt it too, but was deliberately looking away. A client's car alarm went off outside, sharp and sudden, yanking us from the fragile bubble we'd created. She straightened, brushing her hair behind her ear, and for a heartbeat she looked frustrated with the interruption, but not with me. The tension didn't vanish, just shifted, like the storm had moved on but left the charged air behind. "I should probably lock up soon," she said, voice casual but uneven. I nodded, though my hands itched to reach out, to hold her wrist, to stop the night from ending. She moved toward the door, shoulders stiffening, posture tightening in that subtle way that betrayed control. I lingered behind the counter, watching her silhouette framed in the rain-smeared glass. For a moment, I imagined stepping forward, saying her name, letting all the words I'd swallowed spill out. Our eyes met, and it almost happened. Almost. But then she opened the door and stepped outside, rain soaking her coat, and the moment was gone, like smoke slipping through my fingers. I stayed behind, gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles ached, thinking about that fleeting brush of warmth, that almost confession suspended between us. And I knew, without words, without promises, that neither of us would forget it. The shop was nearly empty, just the two of us and the lingering smell of oil and dust. I was wiping down the counter, pretending to focus on the task, but I couldn't ignore the way she lingered by the tool rack, hands clasped loosely in front of her. The silence stretched, heavy and electric, until it felt like it could collapse at any moment. Finally, she spoke, low and deliberate. "Do you ever wonder what we're doing?" I froze, not because the question was shocking, but because it was so human, so raw. I had imagined this line 1,000 times in my head, in dreams and half-conscious thoughts, but hearing her voice tremble slightly, hearing that hesitation, made it real and terrifying. I started, then stopped. My words felt inadequate, empty against the weight of her gaze. She didn't push, didn't fill the silence with explanation. She just watched, eyes steady, almost daring me to answer honestly. I noticed the small things again, her shoulders slightly hunched, the way her thumb brushed nervously against her wrist, the quiet tremor in her voice even when she tried to sound calm. Everything she was trying to hide screamed louder than anything she said. "I can't. I don't know if I'm supposed to feel this way," she admitted, her voice barely above the hum of the overhead lights. It wasn't confession. It wasn't clarity. It was the rawest sort of admission, an acknowledgement that the rules, the expectations, the world we moved in, didn't make sense anymore. I stepped closer, careful, almost afraid to close the space between us. "I feel it too," I said softly, and she flinched, not from my words, but from the intensity behind them. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the air itself was bending toward us. We didn't move. We didn't touch. There was nothing to hold on to except each other's unspoken truths and the quiet understanding that everything had shifted. For a long moment, we just existed there, two people caught in the same impossible gravity. Her eyes found mine, unwavering, and for the first time I saw it. The exhaustion, the confusion, the longing, all tangled together in a way that neither of us could untangle. She swallowed hard, lips pressing together, as if holding back something she wasn't ready to say. I wanted to reach for her hand, to break the spell, to offer comfort, but the moment was fragile. I wanted her to say more, to tell me she knew I understood, but she didn't. She just breathed slowly, letting the silence stretch until it was unbearable, until it said everything we couldn't. Finally, she whispered, almost to herself, almost as if I wasn't there. "I don't know if I can stop thinking about this about you." And then she turned away, shoulders stiff, hiding behind a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The words hung in the air, unclaimed, devastating. I wanted to ask her to stay, to explain, to argue, but I didn't. All I could do was watch her walk toward the back room, leaving me with the echo of a vulnerability I couldn't fix, couldn't reach, and couldn't ignore. I found her sitting on the workbench, knees drawn up, staring at a worn notebook. The shop smelled faintly of rain and metal, and the hum of fluorescent lights seemed louder than usual. She didn't notice me at first, lost in whatever memory the pages held. "You're up late," I said softly, careful not to startle her. She looked up, eyes glossy, mouth slightly parted. I was just remembering," she muttered, closing the notebook too quickly. But the way her fingers lingered on the cover told me she wasn't done. There was a weight in her shoulders I hadn't seen before, subtle but undeniable. I stepped closer, unsure if I should ask or just let her speak. Remembering what? She hesitated, eyes dropping to the floor. Someone I lost a long time ago, she admitted, voice breaking just slightly. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, resigned, and somehow heavier than anything she'd said before. I thought I had moved on. But sometimes it feels like it's still right here, she said, pressing her hand to her chest. I wanted to say something reassuring, but the right words escaped me. Instead, I sat down beside her, careful to keep a respectful distance, letting her own words fill the space. I noticed the way her hand trembled as she traced the edge of the notebook, the way her eyes flicked to mine and then away, like she was afraid of being seen too clearly. I lost someone too, I said quietly, more to myself than to her, though she heard it. It was unexpected, and it changes the way you look at everything, doesn't it? She nodded, barely perceptible, her lips pressed together as if she were trying to hold the words inside. I could see the flicker of pain and longing crossing her face, the same flicker I'd noticed in small moments before. The way she laughed too softly, the way she hesitated over tasks, the way she never quite let herself relax. Then she handed me the notebook, almost as if surrendering a secret. I flipped it open carefully and saw faded photographs tucked between pages. A younger version of her, smiling with someone whose absence was painfully obvious. I caught my breath, a strange ache spreading in my chest. The person in the photos wasn't just a memory. They were the reason she carried herself with such quiet caution, the reason her eyes sometimes seemed to look past me and into another time entirely. She watched me, expression unreadable, and whispered, "I don't know if I should even be telling you this." "You're telling me now," I said softly. "And it matters." She nodded, blinking rapidly, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was shared, intimate, like the storm outside had finally settled between us. Then she looked at me with an almost imperceptible tilt of her head, lips parted, eyes glossy. I haven't felt safe letting anyone see this side of me, not in a long time." I swallowed hard, aware of the gravity in her tone, the delicate tremor in her voice. I wanted to say something that would fix it, that would erase the ache, but all I could do was meet her gaze and nod. And then she sighed, a long, quiet release, and whispered just for herself, or maybe for me. "Maybe you shouldn't be here. And maybe I don't care." The words hung in the room, soft and seismic, and I realized that something had shifted. Something fundamental, fragile, and unspoken had changed, and neither of us would ever be the same again. The shop smelled faintly of rain and oil, the world outside washed gray by the afternoon drizzle. We were sitting on the floor near the tool shelves, legs stretched out awkwardly, surrounded by scattered parts we'd been too tired to put away. The chaos somehow felt like its own kind of peace. She reached for a wrench I'd dropped, our hands brushing lightly. Nothing dramatic, just a soft touch, but it was enough to make my chest tighten. We didn't speak immediately, letting the silence settle around us like an unspoken agreement. "I guess," she started, voice low, hesitant. "I guess I've been trying to pretend I could handle everything on my own, that I didn't need anyone." I nodded, unsure how to respond. Because I understood. I'd been trying to hold myself back, too, thinking there was a line I couldn't cross, a boundary I couldn't test. But sitting there, inches apart, the world condensed to the hum of the lights and the muted rain, it all felt irrelevant. "I didn't mean to pull you into all that," she continued, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, shoulders tense, yet somehow unguarded. "But I think I'm glad you're here." I smiled faintly, a relief I couldn't fully name. "I'm glad too," I said quietly. Not a confession, not a promise. Just acknowledgement. The kind that matters more than words. We leaned back against the tool rack, and I noticed the small details I'd missed before. The soft line of her jaw, the way her hands rested on her knees, the quiet steadiness she usually reserved for everyone else but me. She caught my gaze and held it, neither of us needing to fill the space with anything more. Then, almost instinctively, our hands found each other. Just fingers, gently intertwined, no need for a declaration. The touch was tentative, respectful, yet it carried everything that had been building between us: tension, longing, hesitation, understanding. Her lips quirked slightly at the corner, and I realized we were both holding our breath, neither willing to ruin the fragility of the moment with words. There was no rush, no dramatic gesture, just two people sitting quietly, letting the closeness speak for itself. The rain outside softened to a drizzle, and for the first time, the repair shop felt like a safe place, not just from the world, but from ourselves. The air between us was calm, yet charged, like we had acknowledged something undeniable without forcing it into existence. She leaned her forehead briefly against mine, and the simple pressure made the weight of everything else, past regrets, missed chances, fears, dissolve into the quiet. We stayed like that for a while, two human beings sharing space, sharing understanding, and letting the world wait. Finally, she pulled back slightly, still holding my hand. She didn't speak. I didn't either. There was no need. Because some truths don't require words. Some connections, once earned, just exist. And in that silence, in that shared space, I realized we had crossed into something inevitable, careful, fragile, and entirely ours. The moment didn't end with fireworks or declarations. It ended with quiet finality. Our fingers still entwined, shoulders relaxed, hearts aligned in a way we didn't need to name. It's strange how some moments stay with you, not because they're loud or dramatic, but because they quietly rearrange the way you move through the world. Sitting here now, months later, I can still feel that soft pressure of her hand against mine, the weightless inevitability of it. The repair shop has long since closed down for the day, but the memory lingers, like sunlight through blinds, soft and unshakable. I've changed. I notice the small things now, the pauses in conversation, the way someone leans when they trust you, the unspoken truths hiding in laughter. I carry a patience I didn't have before, a careful attentiveness that isn't just for her, but for the people who matter around me. She's changed too, though I don't tell her often. She lets herself breathe more, lets the walls slip just a fraction wider, enough that someone, just one someone, can be allowed inside. She smiles differently now, not out of necessity or control, but because she chooses it. I don't think she'll ever admit how much that moment, that quiet collapse into mutual understanding, stayed with her. Love, I've realized, isn't always the grand gesture. It's in the lingering glances, the brush of fingers, the spaces between words where trust lives. It's quiet, fragile, unstoppable, once earned. And sometimes, it's enough simply to exist alongside someone without trying to fix the world. I think back to the first day the blinds were closed, and her smirk that refused to vanish from my mind. It feels like a different lifetime, and yet every tiny heartbeat from that day is stitched into who we are now. What started as curiosity, tension, hesitation, and longing grew into something patient, human, and real. Something neither of us could have forced or predicted, but something both of us needed. Sometimes I catch myself watching her laugh at something mundane, or listening to the quiet way she breathes when she's lost in thought, and I feel the same pull I did then, but softer, steadier. The storm has passed. We've navigated the fragile spaces between fear and desire, regret and trust, and arrived somewhere that feels permanent, even if we never name it. The afterglow isn't flashy. It isn't a declaration or a climax. It's the warmth in shared silence, the subtle rhythm of two people who've chosen to be patient, careful, and entirely present. And it's enough. So if you've ever felt a moment that changed everything quietly, that lingered long after the world moved on, maybe you know this feeling too. The kind of connection that makes ordinary spaces feel sacred, that turns hesitation into understanding and curiosity into something unspoken yet undeniable. And maybe, just maybe, you can take a breath, look around, and notice the quiet moments in your own life that have been waiting to be cherished. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear about the moments that stayed with you.